welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really important, the evolution in how we think about workplace harassment prevention.
That's right.
We're moving beyond, just ticking the compliance boxes.
Exactly.
We're diving deep into psychological safety and, well, what that actually means for workplaces today.
Yeah, for a long time it felt like the main goal was just staying out of legal trouble, wasn't it? But what we're seeing now is that a genuinely safe, productive place to work, that really depends on something deeper.
Like trust.
Yeah, trust, security. That feeling that lets people actually, be themselves and bring their best work.
So for this deep dive, we're looking at a resource called Workplace Harassment, the New Standards of Psychological Safety. And it really helps unpack this whole idea.
It does. It lays out why it's become so critical right now and gives some practical ways to actually build these kinds of environments.
Right. Our mission here is to really understand how focusing on psychological safety isn't just like a perk or a nice to have.
No, it's fundamental.
It's foundational for good teams, for ethical leadership in today's world. It's about shifting from just stopping the bad stuff to actively building the good stuff.
And just to be clear, psychological safety, it doesn't mean everyone's always happy or agrees on everything.
No, definitely not about avoiding tough talks.
Not at all. It's more about this core belief that you won't get, punished or humiliated or just ignored if you speak up.
So that could be anything, right? Like sharing a different idea.
Or asking a question that feels basic, or pointing out a problem, or even just admitting you made a mistake.
Okay, let's really get into that. If a team or a company has strong psychological safety, what's the actual payoff? What does that look like?
Well, when that safety net is there, the benefits kind of ripple outwards.
Yeah.
Teams get way more creative.
Because people aren't afraid to throw out wild ideas.
Exactly. They're not self-censoring. And they become much more adaptable too, because potential issues, they get flagged early on.
Before they blow up.
Right, before they escalate.
Yeah.
And problem solving just gets better because you're hearing from everyone, getting all these different viewpoints.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it just reduces risk across the board because things are surfaced sooner.
Okay, and flipping that, what happens when it's missing? What are the red flags, the consequences?
Well, the biggest thing is silence. That's
Yeah.
the immediate impact when psychological safety isn't there.
People just clam up.
Yeah. They see stuff, they have concerns, maybe they even have solutions, but they're worried about the fallout.
Like being labeled difficult.
Or facing backlash, or just being dismissed, And that silence, it's where innovation goes to die.
Stagnation sets in.
Right. New ideas don't get aired. And worse, bad behavior, things that could even become harassment, can just continue unchecked because nobody feels safe enough to call it out.
That really highlights why the old way, the sort of tick box compliance training, just isn't enough on its own.
Exactly. I mean, policies and training, they set the rules, the baseline, they tell you what not to do. But they don't automatically build that trust, that security that makes someone feel okay speaking up, especially in those gray areas that aren't, like clear policy violations.
Yeah.
And that's the big shift we're talking about.
Yeah.
There's this growing recognition that a culture of safety and respect, it's not just the right thing to do ethically.
It's actually essential for the team to function well.
Yes, it's a requirement for effective teams, for organizational health. It's both a legal and a practical necessity now.
So, okay, this sounds like it puts a different kind of spotlight on ethical leadership. It's not just about dodging legal bullets anymore.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way we understand ethical leadership today goes way beyond just following the law. It means leaders have to actively, consistently show integrity.
How so?
Well, they need to deliberately build trust, foster a culture where, dignity and real inclusion are just how things are done, the norm.
And it's the day-to-day stuff that really matters, isn't it? Not just big speeches.
Absolutely. Ethical leadership in this context means being accountable, being transparent, making fair decisions every single day.
Just treating people with respect because it's the right way.
Exactly. Not because policy says you have to, but because it's fundamental. And when leaders live that consistently, it has this huge ripple effect. You get more honest communication, stronger teams.
And better business results, presumably?
Yeah, ultimately contributing to growth and sustainability.
It makes a lot of sense intuitively, but is there, hard proof data that shows how critical this psychological safety thing really is for how teams perform?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, one of the best examples, probably the most famous one, is Google's Project Aristotle.
Ah, yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's this huge study they did, really in depth, looking at what made their best teams. Well, the best. What set them apart?
And what did they find?
The single biggest finding, the #1 predictor of team effectiveness, was psychological safety.
Wow. Number one. So more important than, say, who was on the team or individual skills.
That's what their data showed. Yeah, they found these really strong links between high psychological safety and things like better job satisfaction, more innovation, and actually measurably better decision-making.
That's pretty compelling.
It really drives home the point that even if you have great anti-harassment rules on paper, they won't work fully if people are still afraid to speak up or challenge things.
Yeah, the policy is only as good as the culture allows it to be.
Right. And what's fascinating about the Google findings is, this is Google, famous for hiring top talent, right? But even there, it wasn't just about individual brilliance. It was that glue of psychological safety that made the difference.
So it's a strategic advantage, really.
Totally. Not just a feel-good thing. It suggests that creating that safe space is actually key to unlocking potential.
So it really comes down to weaving those values, respect, inclusion, ethical behavior into the everyday stuff, the daily routines of the workplace.
Exactly. That's how you build these environments. And the resource we're drawing from, New Standards of Psychological Safety, points to some frameworks that are emerging to help do this, like trauma-informed leadership.
Okay, tell me more about that, trauma-informed.
Yeah, it's about leaders understanding that people might have past experiences, maybe even past workplace trauma, that affects how they react now. So being aware of potential triggers, responding with empathy, trying to create predictability and calm that directly builds psychological safety, especially for those who might be more vulnerable.
So what does that look like practically, beyond just being nice?
Well, it might mean be really mindful of how you communicate, avoiding abrupt changes that could feel destabilizing, prioritizing consistency.
Giving people a sense of control.
Yeah, exactly. Fostering resilience rather than accidentally re-triggering distress. It's a deep level of awareness.
That makes a lot of sense, especially given how diverse people's life experiences are. What else is part of these new standards?
Another big one is how we think about modern DEI initiatives. Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right. How is that evolving?
Well, modern DEI isn't just about numbers or representation anymore. It's about truly creating that sense of belonging and psychological safety for everyone.
Okay.
Recognizing that some groups, because of historical marginalization or past negative experiences, might feel less safe speaking up. So the focus shifts to actively making sure all voices are heard and valued.
So a truly inclusive place is inherently a more psychologically safe place.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Especially for those who've traditionally been on the margins.
And are there bigger trends pushing this forward beyond individual companies?
Oh, for sure. You see it in global standards like ISO 4503.
What's that?
It's basically an international standard focused on occupational health and safety. We're specifically addressing psychosocial risks, mental well-being at work.
Ah, so it's treating mental health as a core safety issue.
Precisely. It signals this global agreement that mental well-being, which includes psychological safety, is just as vital as protecting people from physical hazards. It's a big shift towards a more holistic view of workplace safety.
Got it.
And then, woven through all of this, is that idea of ethical leadership we talked about. The constant expectation that leaders walk the talk. Integrity, listening, building trust through their actions.
Okay, so these standards give us the why and the what, but how do organizations actually do this? The document also gives some practical tools, right?
Yes, absolutely. Really concrete things teams and leaders can use.
Let's break some of those down. First one, lead with empathy and respect. What are the key do's and don'ts there?
Okay, so the do's are about actively trying to understand where your team members are coming from. Really listening.
Putting yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, and being willing to say, oops, I got that wrong, admitting mistakes, and just fundamentally treating everyone fairly. Consistency is key.
And the don'ts?
The big ones are, don't ignore it when people are clearly stressed or struggling. Don't pass the buck or deflect blame when things go sideways. And definitely don't play favorites. That kills trust fast.
Yeah, that favoritism thing can be so corrosive. Okay, next tool. Encourage open dialogue and listening. How do you make that happen?
Well, you have to consciously create the space for it. Maybe dedicated time in meetings or informal check-ins.
They make it normal to talk.
Right. And when people do speak up, especially with tough feedback, you got to thank them for it, genuinely.
Even if it's hard to hear.
Especially then. And crucially, Show them their input matters by actually acting on it when you can. Follow through.
And what should leaders avoid doing?
Avoid shutting down ideas you don't immediately like.
Yeah.
Avoid interrupting people all the time. And don't just...
Right, making sure the systems work and people trust them.
Yeah. So the do's here are things like properly training managers on how to handle reports seriously and sensitively, offering ways for people to report concerns without revealing their identity, if they choose, to reduce that fear of backlash.
Anonymous options.
Exactly. And actively protecting anyone who does come forward from any kind of negative consequence. Zero tolerance for retaliation.
And the don'ts.
Well, the absolute don't is never punish a whistleblower. Don't ignore complaints or sweep them under the rug. And don't minimize things that are reported, take them seriously.
That trust in the process is everything, isn't it? Otherwise, it's just procedures on paper.
Totally. Window dressing. Okay, next tool. Make inclusion a daily habit. How does that translate into everyday actions?
Beyond just like diversity training once a year.
Yeah, way beyond. It's about weaving it into how the team operates constantly.
Yeah.
So do's could be things like rotating who leads meetings or takes notes, giving everyone a chance.
Spreading the visibility.
Right. Actively asking for and celebrating different perspectives. Offering flexibility when possible to accommodate different needs.
And what to avoid.
Avoid letting the same few people dominate every conversation. Don't overlook accessibility needs, physical or otherwise. And don't tolerate bias. Even those subtle comments or actions, the microaggressions, they add up.
Those small, consistent signals really matter for making people feel like they belong.
They really do. Okay, next one. Empower bystanders and allies. This is about recognizing it's not just management's job.
Everyone plays a part.
Exactly. So doses include providing bystander intervention training, giving people skills and confidence to step in safely, acknowledging and praising people when they do act as allies, maybe fostering peer support networks so people feel less alone.
And the don'ts.
Don't let problematic behavior just slide by in silence. Don't assume HR will magically fix everything. And don't somehow shame people who try to intervene, even if it's imperfectly. Encourage the effort.
That's powerful, empowering everyone to be part of the solution. Okay, next. Recognize and reward the good. How do you do that effectively?
This is about actively reinforcing the positive stuff. So, do's. Give public shout-outs for respectful, inclusive actions.
Make it visible.
Yes. Link positive behaviors to performance reviews, showing they're truly valued. Share success stories that highlight good teamwork and culture.
And what pitfalls to avoid?
Avoid only focusing on mistakes or problems. Don't overlook the quieter contributors who are doing great work. And crucially, don't reward results if they were achieved by someone acting like a jerk. Toxic high performers are still toxic.
Right, it sends the wrong message entirely. Okay, last practical tool. Commit to ongoing learning and accountability, emphasizing this is a journey.
Precisely. It's never done. So the do's are things like regular training refreshers, using surveys or feedback tools to keep a pulse on the team climate.
Checking in regularly.
Yeah, and being willing to tackle cultural issues head on when they surface. The don'ts are treating this like a one-off initiative.
Like, we did our inclusion training check.
Exactly. Don't ignore feedback that indicates problems persist. And don't avoid those tough, maybe uncomfortable conversations about the culture itself.
These are really tangible steps. It makes psychological safety feel less like this abstract concept and more like something you can actively build.
Absolutely. It shows it's achievable through consistent, deliberate effort using tools like these. It's about moving past compliance to genuinely build better workplaces.
So as we wrap up this deep dive looking at workplace harassment, the new standards of psychological safety, it feels really clear. Psychological safety isn't just, corporate jargon.
No, it's essential.
It's fundamental for any workplace that wants to thrive today. It's so much more than just avoiding lawsuits. It's really about building trust, sparking innovation, embedding ethical behavior throughout the whole organization.
And creating that kind of environment, well, it takes real work, doesn't it? A conscious, ongoing effort from everyone, especially leaders who need to listen, keep learning, and hold themselves and others accountable.
Yeah, consistently using these practical tools in the day-to-day.
Exactly.
So a final thought for you listening. Maybe reflect on your own workplace. Think about the subtle ways psychological safety, or maybe the lack of it, shows up. Are there small changes, things inspired by what we've discussed today that you could maybe advocate for, or even just start doing yourself?
Yeah, what's one small step you could take?
Because ultimately, this isn't just about preventing harassment or problems. It's really about unlocking people's potential and the potential of the whole team or organization. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Thank you, viewers, for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with your colleagues. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking that subscribe button below, so you never miss out on valuable insights. I'm Brian Edmonds, signing off. See you in the next one.